All right, the benefit of recording these is that I'll post them, and then you can go back and rewatch them as many times as you need to, rewind, pause, whatever. It makes it easy. Okay. So, first thing we're going to do. Now, you should know that when I draw this, I'm going to be drawing it. This is going to be about the angle I'm seeing it from. Obviously, this projector is top down, so if I were to set it down like that, that's not the right angle to draw from. You want that good isometric 3/4 view, either this way or that way. Okay, so you're seeing three views. You're seeing the top, the side, the front of the object. All right, so you won't be able to see, but I'm going to have the car right up here at an angle that I can look at it comfortably. All right, so the first thing we do is we look at the object. We want to take a minute, study it, examine what we're doing, get a feel for the proportion of the parts. Okay, so we've got a box here that we're going to be making the main body from. We have several little sections here that we'll need to subdivide. This back portion here, which I guess is where the person would be driving, the driver would sit. Got the little spoiler in the back. This other part, which I guess maybe there's an intake or something, I don't know. All right, and then this part kind of rounds out the front. And then you've got your wheels. So we're going to be doing a combination of additive and subtractive techniques. Now, you guys remember this from last week. I showed you this. All right, remember, additive is when you build one piece and then put another piece on top of it. So you're making it piecemeal, like in a sequential way almost. Subtractive is when you make the entire block first, you build the whole thing, and then you subdivide and sort of, in essence, take parts away. Almost like you're cutting them out. All right, so we're going to be combining both of those with this. Yes, question?
Are we allowed to do both?
Yes. I just said we're going to be doing both for this, so it's kind of like a necessity. Okay? All right, so the first thing we do once we kind of look at the object, get familiar with it, is we want to start off with our anchor line towards the bottom of the paper, because you want to leave room for the length of your object. If it's a long object, you don't want to start it up here, or it's going to get cut off. And you want your drawing to take up, most of the paper, like most of the real estate, I guess, okay? Just like this one here. All right, that I did last time. So I've got my angle going this way. Then I've got angle going this way. Again, I am keeping my mark making pretty loose and sketchy, kind of light. Just like always. You're going to find that a lot of the techniques that we learned in the last unit for doing still lifes are applicable to this too. So the 3 L's, light, draw, light, loose, and large. Okay? So here we have, approximately, you never know exactly how it's going to be, but generally speaking, you just kind of have to approximate. All right, so I've got my 4 sides here. Remember, each line on a given axis has to be parallel with the other, so everything going this way has to be parallel. Everything going this way has to be parallel. And then finally, the last axis is that z-axis going up and down. Kind of use the edge of your paper as a guide. Okay, and then go up however far you think you need to account for the height of this object. So I'm not going to go up too high. Somewhere in this neighborhood is going to be tall enough, I think. And if it's not, and a lot of times you might need to go a little longer or a little shorter, a little taller, etc. It's easy enough to adjust it. If you make a mistake, it's okay. Got a weird angle here, so try not to bump the little thing the camera's on. Okay. So just make everything parallel, nice and straight. Take your time. Everything else you do is going to be based off of this box, so make sure that it is accurate. Okay. All right. Now we want to go back to the object again. We want to look at the side. All right. The profile, the side profile or silhouette of the car is this shape here. So we want to, almost like a stamp or a cookie cutter, we want to be able to take this outline of this shape, this flat shape, and transfer it to this front edge of the box. Okay? So this is where we again have to look closely at where these little corners are, where it, curves down. And I'm going to make a subdivision about there, about there, and about there. Okay. And then I'm going to just very lightly start to sketch out these curved lines here based on these subdivisions. I've found that my box is maybe just a little taller than I need it to be, so it's okay. I can just leave that gap there. If it's not off by much, you can just draw it shorter. You don't need to bring the box down or anything. So each one is just maybe a little bit shorter than the last. They get almost like stairs. They get lower and lower. And, then I've got my spoiler back here. Kind of like that. Not a very specific shape, but I'm sure that when they were making these things and using the bandsaw or whatever it was that they used to cut these, that they couldn't really get angles. They had to kind of soften these up so it'd be safe. There wouldn't be any pointy edges for little kids. Okay, so there we go. That's pretty much got our shape. Doesn't look like much yet. Now we want to basically draw this same shape on the opposite side and line it up. So in order to do that, we're going to need to draw. Remember we talked about last week drawing through the form. So whenever you have one of these little angles or points, you're going to carry it through to the back of the box. And when you do that, remember, you want to keep everything parallel to everything else on that axis. Use the box as a guide to help you. Okay? Just like that. Now, we want to use our box to help us kind of make, parallel versions of these curved lines. It's a lot harder to do parallel lines when they're curved than when they're straight, but you want to try to just mimic the curves and have them connect to these same lines. And we'll do one back here too to show where that curve ends on the back end. And there's the spoiler. Spoiler alert. Okay. And we'll just continue to accentuate some of these lines. Whenever possible, I am moving my, you can't see this on the projection, but I am, when I'm making these through lines, I'm kind of moving my whole arm up through my shoulder. That helps me kind of maintain a straight line. Okay, and then that kind of gives me pretty much the body of the car. Now, we want to do the wheels. So you want to take a good look at how these wheels are spaced. Look at the center of the wheel. If I draw a line up from the center of that wheel is going to line up pretty much with that front little bump. So that means from this point, I'm going to draw a little line down. That's about where the center of my front wheel will be. The back wheel is going to line up right about there on the car, which translates to about there on my drawing. So once again, I'll draw a line going down to about there. I'll draw a little line parallel to the bottom. Make sure that those two line up. So now we can start with the wheels. Now remember, last week we talked about drawing ellipses and how you can draw an ellipse by drawing a square or a rectangle. So what we want to do, because these are perfect circles, we want to draw a square that's about the size of that wheel so that we can then do the ellipse. So I am going to with this dot as my center, try to draw a square that surrounds this dot. But you see how I did that? I did not. Some people make this mistake. They will, like, this will be their box, like it'll be going this direction. Right? And then for some unknown reason, they'll make their boxes look like this. This is not parallel to this, is it? So this is not right. So when you draw this, it needs to be parallel to everything else, right? Does that make sense? I can't emphasize that enough. This box has to be parallel with the larger box. And once you have this first one drawn, you can use this one as a guide. You can kind of measure and say, okay, The top of that should be about there. The bottom is about there. And I honestly might need to just come up a tad on the bottom of my car like that. Okay. All right. Now we want to, before we start drawing the ellipses, let's get our other wheels set up. Even though these are 4 separate wheels, if we view this as one long cylinder that runs through the form, that way we can line things up. So we want to just take these and draw all the way through, like one big cylinder, and then we'll cut off the wheels. So again, I'm going to draw through my form. Keep these lines parallel, like so. Do the same with this. Now, yes, it is getting a little tricky now, getting some overlapping lines, so you really need to concentrate when you do this. So you can't be chatting with your friends, you can't be distracted. You need to really kind of be in the zone and focus on this to make sure everything lines up. That looks about right. Now, on both sets of these squares, we want to draw another square just behind the one we did, like that. Another one behind this one, just like that. And these 2 squares are going to represent the inside and the outside of each wheel. And you want the center to line up as well. Now we can subdivide each of these, carry it through to the sides and the back. And again, if you did this right, the center of each of these should line up if things are truly parallel. If not, you need to go back and tweak a little bit. Now, we can add our ellipses. And remember, an ellipse is not something like this where you just draw the square, subdivide it, and then you just kind of draw a random circle inside of it. That's wrong. You want the ellipse to take up the entire square that you draw. So the square has to be correct. And you want a nice smooth ellipse. You don't want a football, you don't want a lopsided thing, right? You want a nice smooth round ellipse that just kind of skims the edge of the boundaries of that box. And if you have done it correctly, you are going to wind up with 2 identical ellipses that are just overlapping each other. that should be smooth and consistent, taking up the entire square. These back ones get a little tricky, but and even though we can't see these back wheels, like I can't see them at all from where I'm viewing the object, but I know they're there. They're part of the structure of the object, so I need to draw them. And now we want to add a sense of line quality to the drawing. Remember, we talked about that a lot so far since the beginning of the year. And, you know, in a normal drawing, again, you would probably erase a lot of this stuff. But in this kind of a drawing, you want to include all of your construction lines because we want to see how you built these forms up. So it's like that show your math analogy like in math class. You can't just write the answer, you got to show the equation. This is the art kind of version of that. So to make the final things visible, just go back over and make the forward edges and lines a little darker and a little thicker than the rest. And there you go. There is your race car. Now looking at it, I probably should have gone a little thinner with the box. It's a little chunky, but it's the basic, you get the basic idea. All right, so are there any questions about any of this? No? Everybody got it? It's pretty straightforward. Okay. So what I want us to do, I guess, is just continue practicing in your sketchbooks. Practice this first. When we do our final drawing, it's going to be on the bigger drawing paper. Okay? So that's it. We will use the remaining time in class to practice, and then we'll continue practicing tomorrow. We've got almost 20 minutes left, so that's plenty of time to get started.